What's up, YouTube? Today we have the privilege of reviewing this beautiful Accelerate Yellow Metallic C8 Corvette with that beefy Z51 high wing spoiler out back. Huge thank you to Koons, Tysons, Chevy, Buick, GMC for lending me this C8 to review for you guys today. If you're interested in this particular C8, any of the C8s that I have pictured on screen, or putting a deposit down on the new Z06, I'll have their information on screen as well as in the description box down below. But with that said, let's get into the video. First, let's talk about looks. This thing has a very aggressive looking front end. The sharp lines on the hood as well as the sharp lines on the daytime running lights contribute to the menacing look, as do the dual air intakes on both the right and left side of the front bumper. This front splitter also adds that element of aggressiveness. I think it's definitely an option that you should check off if you are getting a C8. But opening the front trunk, the lines right here resemble that of like a Lamborghini Aventador to me. I don't know if I'll post up a picture right here and you can see that same kind of like M type design. But opening the front trunk, you push this button twice and hold it and it pops open. And it's definitely a decent sized front trunk, definitely bigger than like a Lamborghini Aventador. You can fit like carry-on luggage, a duffel bag, a backpack or two. So definitely enough space up here. If you're going on a couple day trip, you definitely fit like a small little suitcase or something like that. But you also have a 12-volt outlet up here as well as a little light there. And if you're gonna fill up your windshield washer fluid, that's where you do it right there. But closing this, let's take a step back and look at the front end. I think it definitely looks great. But moving alongside, you can see these mirrors. I think these mirrors look great. Definitely a very nice design, and the shape of the mirror definitely matches the rear end very well. Like, it's got the same kind of angle right here as the rear end does, which I think is awesome. But moving to kind of right behind the driver door, the passenger door also has an air intake, but you have this air intake right here to aid with the cooling of that big 6.2 liter V8 that you have out back. But like I was talking about the aggressiveness of that front splitter, you also do have these side rockers right here, which are very aggressive. You can see they have this little like canard type thing that comes up and, you know, directs the air towards the brakes, which I think is very good design, especially if you're going to be tracking a C8 or something like that. But moving back here, you can see, let's talk about cooling a little bit more. You have these vents on the right and left side of this glass right here, and you can see that 6.2 liter V8 there. Obviously this also aids with the cooling, as does at the bottom of this beautiful piece of glass right here. You do see that you do have an opening right there, and that's also to help aid with the cooling of the big motor right here. But let's talk about that motor a little bit more, and we'll pop this rear hood. Just like the front, you click this button on the right side of the key fob and hold, and boom, it pops open, and then you just lift it up. And boom, you can see that beautiful 6.2 liter V8 that's surrounded by that beautiful carbon fiber. That's the engine appearance package. That's $1,150. It's definitely cool thing too. If you're like at a car show or something and you pop your hood, you want to show off your engine, you definitely kind of want to have that carbon fiber just to give it another element of awesomeness. I think that's definitely an option. You can definitely skip it, but if it was me, I'd definitely probably get it just because it looks just that much better. And but right here you can see there's a little bit more storage space, and right now they're storing the floor mats in here. But this is where, if you get the coupe, you can take the roof off. So it's kind of like a T-top. You take the roof off and you set it in here. So obviously when you set the roof in here, you don't really have any storage space. But if the roof is on, you have just that much more storage space for some more duffel bags, some more backpacks, maybe a suitcase in here. But definitely, if you have the roof on and you have stuff in the front trunk and in the rear trunk, you can definitely do like a week or two trip out of your C8 Corvette. Like from here where we are in Virginia, you can go down to Miami, Florida, spend a little bit of time there, do a nice road trip, because you definitely want to do a road trip. You know, this thing rides very, very well. It's very comfortable, and you know, you've got the storage space to go along with that comfortability. So it's definitely a car that is a grand tourer. You can take it on a road trip if you want to go around the US. You can definitely do something like that. Obviously you want to pack lightly, but you know, there's definitely a great amount of storage space, and obviously there's some more storage space inside of the car if you don't have a passenger. But let's close that hood, and you do have a soft closing hood right here. You can see it pulls itself down, And you can see the Stingray badge right here. I actually really like the Stingray badge. I think it looks great. But one thing my buddy pointed out when he was just looking around the car, I don't know if the GoPro is going to pick it up, but at the top of this glass you can see the Corvette logo pretty much. See if you can pick it up right there at the top, which it's really cool. It's just a little element. It's kind of like an Easter egg type thing. If you notice it, you notice it. If you don't notice it, you don't notice it. But it's just a cool thing that I think Chevy did. But this car does have the Z51 package, which I'll have what the Z51 package includes right here on screen. But you can option for the high wing, and this Corvette does have that high wing option. Personally, if I was to get a C8, I would definitely check the high wing box off. I think it just really sets the rear end off very well. It makes it look more exotic, more of like a sports car rather than something like a Grand Tourer, which I think the C8 without the wing looks more like a Grand Tourer and more like, I don't want to offend anybody, but more of an older person's car. If you're a younger person, you definitely want to get the high wing, or at least that other wing. I'll picture that other wing right here. Definitely want to get one of those two options. But looking at the rear tail lights, these are the rear daytime running lights. I think they look awesome. Definitely a fan of, you know, that type L-shaped design that they have. The L shape on this side, and then if you look on this side as well, they're coming back the opposite way. And I think the lights in and of themselves look very good. They don't look cheap. They don't look like they cheaped out at the rear end. They definitely look very good, and I'm definitely a fan of the design. They kind of look somewhat similar to like a C7 rear tail lights, but they definitely give it just that updated look that you want on the C8, and they match the rear end very well with like the angular shape. I don't know, it just goes together very well. But you know, obviously 2021, this is a C8 fully loaded pretty much. You've got your rear backup sensors there. You also have your rear backup camera there as well. And right up here, you notice you got another camera right there. That is for your rear view camera mirror. So obviously this thing looks like it's kind of hard to see out of, and it is kind of when you have like mid-engine cars, they're harder to see out of than some other vehicles. But this thing's actually not that terrible to see out of. But when you have that camera right there, it makes it that much easier to see out of the rear, because this wing does kind of block a little bit of visibility when you're just using the regular mirror and not the camera. But looking at the rear, she's pretty thick, you know, definitely looks awesome. And this is a rear 3/4 angle right there, just so badass. I really like the way that this thing looks. But moving to these rear tires here, this is a 305 30/20. Definitely a good size tire to put the power to the ground, because you got 495 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. And if you're going to be doing 2.8 seconds 0 to 60s, you can't have a thin tire out back. So you definitely want that thick 305 tire. And if you want to put a beefier tire on there, you can. But this is just what comes from the factory. I also really like the wheel design. You know, if you don't like the wheel design, you can add an aftermarket wheel, or aftermarket wheels, excuse me. But you know, that's what you do after the fact. If you don't like the wheel options, just order the cheapest wheel and then get an aftermarket wheel. But I definitely do like the way that these wheels look. And you also have that cool Corvette skull type thing right there, and it says Corvette Racing. And obviously I did mention that this does have the Z51 package, so you do get Z51 brakes, which are that much better than like just your base brakes. Obviously the Z51 package, if you're going to take your car tracking, or if you push it harder on the back roads, you're probably going to want to get the Z51 package, because it just makes the car that much better. But like I said, moving alongside, you do see these beefy rockers right here, along with your other air intake on this side as well. But moving to the front, your front wheel and tire setup is a 245 35 19. So you do have 19s in the front and 20s in the back. And Corvette's been doing that forever. The C7s are like that. So nothing really changed there. But just look at the side profile of this thing. Let's back it up a little bit and take a look. It looks so good. But before we move into the interior, let's talk about fuel economy. I know it's a Corvette and you don't really care that much about fuel economy, or at least you shouldn't. But before we move on to the interior, the C8 gets 15 miles per gallon city and 27 miles per gallon highway, which is surprisingly good considering this is a performance-oriented car. So you could definitely do a long road trip with not only that great gas mileage, but also that comfortability, which I was talking about a little bit earlier. So moving into the interior, to open up the door, you just put your hand right here, and there's a little pad to open up the door, so you just pull back on it. and the window comes down and it opens up. And just look at the door panel right here. You see that we got the beautiful leather right here, and the leather is separated by this nice yellow stitching that goes along down pretty much throughout the entire interior, as you can see right here. We'll get to that in a minute. But like I said, just that nice leather. You got the leather pretty much all the way down the door panel, but you do have a little bit of Alcantara right here and some carbon fiber right here as well. And you got your window switches right here, which also feel very good. They're not cheap feeling by any means. You got your little aluminum trim inside there. But let's step into the vehicle and talk about the interior a little bit more. And while we're at it, why don't we just start her up, because it sounds so good. There's your little C8 right there. It says Corvette right there, so we'll push that start stop button and fire her up. Sounds so good. And that is the camera mirror that I was talking about right there. And you can turn that off by just flipping this little switch right here, and now you just got a regular mirror. But like I said, the interior is very nice. You do have these two memory adjustment seats right here, so you do have two different drivers. You can set your memory for two different people. But right here you do have your Bose Performance Series sound system. I have not heard it yet. I'm gonna plug in my phone and I'm gonna tell you guys my thoughts on how I feel like the sound system sounds. It's got 14 speakers, so 14 speakers for just this little area in here is definitely got to be a great sound system. You know, I've heard the Bose sound systems and other GM products, and they all sound awesome. So I'm definitely assuming that this thing's gonna sound great. But we're gonna talk about that a little bit later once I have played music and stuff. But I haven't really played any music because it's a Corvette. You want to listen to the exhaust note more than you want to listen to the stereo. But if you're on a road trip, I understand you want to listen to some good you know, some good music just to pass time. This Bose sound system is awesome. Definitely if you're into sound systems and stuff like that, opt for this 14 speaker Bose sound system. Dude, you got 14 speakers in just this coupe, so I think that's really cool. But like I said, it's a great sound system. But yeah, you do have your carbon fiber throughout the whole interior pretty much. So this is the carbon fiber interior package. So you got carbon here, you got carbon on the passenger door as well as carbon up by your digital dash right here. So you can see you got your carbon fiber there. So you don't have to get the carbon fiber, but I definitely think it adds to like the supercar-ness of the C8 Corvette. If you want your car to be more like a supercar, like a Lamborghini or something like that, definitely the carbon fiber adds to just that effect of it feeling like, you know, a supercar, like a Lamborghini or Ferrari or something like that. But the leather also flows throughout the top of the dash. You can see right here with that beautiful yellow stitching at the top of the dash as well. You also do have a heads-up display up there. Some more of that beautiful leather. It's also just a very nice and soft feeling leather, and obviously more of that yellow stitching. Like I said, that yellow stitching is throughout the entire interior. You can follow it pretty much everywhere. It's on the seats. Your seat belts right here are also yellow. That is an option as well, so you don't have to get body color. You don't have to get a matching seatbelt to your body color, but I definitely think it's awesome. So this is basically a almost fully loaded C8 Corvette. It's got almost every option that you want. You got your performance data recorder, you've got your camera mirror right here, you got a bunch of other features. But let's go through this little digital dash right here. And each and to switch between your different driving modes, you've got this little knob kind of right here, and you just turn it to the right and it'll switch the dash to a different setting. So let's turn. So now this is sport mode and this is track mode. So like I said, each driving mode is a different background right here. So obviously if you're on track, you want to see your RPMs more than you do if you're in sport mode. But let's turn it back to sport mode right here. And you can see your RPM gauge. That kind of reminds me of like a Lamborghini again. So it seems like GM has been taking notes from like Lamborghini or Ferrari and stuff like that, where their center dash is centered around the RPM gauge, which I think is awesome. You definitely want to pay attention to your RPM gauge. You know, once you get higher up into the RPM, especially because you have these paddle shifters that are very responsive, I might add. Unlike, you know, like the C7 Corvettes weren't the most responsive paddle shifters. This has changed the game with that 8-speed dual clutch transmission. These shifts are so crisp. Every time you shift gears, the car goes pow. and I'll show you guys a little bit of clips of it doing that. But you know, moving along, you do have this gear shift right here, so you push to park, pull back to go into reverse, push to go into neutral, and pull back again to go into drive. But when you pull back to go into drive, it puts you in automatic mode basically right off the bat. So if you want to use the paddle shifters, you do have to push this M button right here, and it'll light up and it'll tell you you're in manual mode, and it'll also put a little 1 right here in the center of your RPM gauge right there. So like I said, we're in sport mode, so you got your G-force meter right there, you got your oil temperature, you got your RPM, and you've got your speedometer right here. But let's go back into tour mode and show you what tour mode looks like. And like I don't know if you guys could hear that through the GoPro camera, but the exhaust note also tamed down a little bit. So each mode does affect the exhaust note as well, but I want to put it in park before we move on, just in case. But like I said, you're in tour mode, so you're talking about your fuel economy, which, you know, who's really going to want to drive one of these in tour mode? I feel like actually a decent amount of people probably will. But you also you see your little gas gauge right down here, along with your coolant temperature right down there, and your odometer right over there. This thing's only got 2,000 miles on it. Definitely, if you want to get this car, like I said, Koons, Tysons, Chevy, if you want to get a deal done, they're definitely more than happy to work with you. They're great people, and I'm not just saying that. They actually are very good people. I really like the people over there. But moving along from there, we'll hit that X button right there. You have this little Z button. So this Z button is basically your personalized driving mode, and so this one is definitely more sporty oriented. I hit the Z button, the exhaust note opened up, sounds a lot louder, and let's give it a rev right here real quick. And what I like about the RPM gauge is that it's not laggy. You see that? And like the exhaust is super the gas is super touchy. Like, and I like how, like, see when you rev, it marks to where you rev to. So like, boom, you see that little line right there. It tells you where you last rev to, which is awesome. But moving along, you do have your vents right here with this little knob right there to move between right and left, up and down, which is great. And like I said, this car does have heads-up display, so to adjust the heads-up display either up or down, you do have this little button right here. So obviously up will move the heads-up display projection up. If you want it down, it'll move it down. So you have your info button right here, which adjusts what you see on your heads-up display. And you also have your brightness for your heads-up display. So these little 3 buttons are for your heads-up display. And you also obviously do have a electronic parking brake right there. And you also do have this knob right here to adjust the screen brightness of that thing as well. But you know, looking at the steering wheel, you might think that this is an odd looking steering wheel, which I actually disagree. I really do like the feel of this steering wheel. It feels very good in your hands. The paddle shifters are right where you want them to be, especially if you're going, you know, mobbing down a back road or you're on the track. They're definitely kind of right where you want them to be, and the steering wheel feels very, very good. This is an Alcantara steering wheel, which is an option. The base cars come with leather. I personally really do like the Alcantara. I'm interested to see how this Alcantara is going to last. I bet you it'll last a pretty long time. But if you do want like a steering wheel that's going to last a little bit longer, you probably want to get the leather, just because from what I've noticed from just different vehicles, not GM vehicles, but like, you know, Mustangs and stuff like that, the Alcantara starts to kind of, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but it starts to like mat up kind of right where you have your hands. And I'm interested to see if this car does that. But right here, you do notice you do have like your center mark on your steering wheel. So that's basically wherever this center mark is, that's kind of where you're pointing the car to go. So obviously if you're going 60 miles an hour and you point it this way, you're going to be going pretty much that way. And this thing's got a pretty tight steering ratio, so pretty much right as you turn the steering wheel, you're in another lane. So I actually really do appreciate that. Definitely good for performance oriented driving. Can't really talk about steering feel because I haven't really pushed this car, and I'm not going to push this car. It's not my car. So I do want to respect that. But obviously, you know, it's a Grand Tour, so you do have cruise control right here. You do have your volume up and down right here, so you can, you know, volume down here, volume up here. You know, pretty easy to grab from the steering wheel, especially even if you're in your 9-3 grip, you can still slide down a little bit and hit that volume up and down rather than reaching over here and turning your volume up. from that button right here. But going through the steering wheel, this is a heated steering wheel, and obviously this car does have heated seats as well. It also has cooled seats, but you know, in pictures they have this little climate control stack kind of right here, and it looks a lot more obtrusive in pictures than it really feels like in person. So if you're looking at pictures and you're like, dang, that really separates the driver and the passenger, and it really seems like the passenger side would be cramped, it's really not. This thing is definitely easy for the passenger to adjust if they want their heated seat, or if they want you know, the car to be cooler, or if they want their side to be cooler or warmer. You do have your adjustments, you know, at the top and at the bottom like that, and you know, your fan adjustment is right here in the middle as well. So definitely very easy. Like if you're on a drive, you know, you just click the button. You can have your left hand on the steering wheel while you're messing with this stuff, and you know, it's definitely, it looks, like I said, a lot harder to use than it really is. It's definitely a lot easier to use, and it feels a lot more ergonomic, and it's very driver focused, which is something I really like about the C8. It feels like a cockpit. Like, you know, you're sitting, this is kind of where my eyes are, and you're sitting in here, you've got your, you know, your steering wheel right here, you've got all the information that you need on your digital dash right there. If you're using Apple CarPlay or something like that, you've got your you know, you got your infotainment screen right here, which is also pointed at you, which is great. So this, like I said, very driver focused car. But you know, if you want your traction control, you got your traction control right here. This vehicle in particular does have front end lift with memory. So let's say you know, you're pulling out of your driveway, right, and you've got a pretty steep driveway, so you need to lift your front nose up. It'll actually ask you if you want to memorize that particular spot, and every time that you pull in the driveway, it's going to lift up and lower kind of right where you tell it to. So I think that's an awesome feature. I'm hoping that more manufacturers pick up on that, like Lamborghini and stuff like that, because it just makes your life that much easier, and you don't have to think about it all the time, which is awesome. And I'm definitely a huge fan of that. But also following that, you do have a front camera button. So if you're pulling up to a curb, just push the front camera button and you can see kind of right exactly where your front splitter is, so you don't mess that up. So I think that's great. But moving up here, you do have OnStar, and you do have your hazards button right here, and you also do have a motion sensor, which I'm not quite exactly sure what the motion sensor does, but I know like on Lamborghinis, and I'm not 100% sure, so don't hold me to this, but I know on Lamborghinis there's like a certain button that you can press, so if people are reaching in your car that shouldn't be, the alarm will go off. So I'm not 100% sure if that's what that button does, but I know that's what that button does, or they have something like that on Lamborghinis that'll set the alarm off, just in case, you know, you got people reaching in your car that you don't want them to be reaching in your car. But opening this up, you know, you got a decent sized cup holder for you know, water bottle, or you know, something along those lines, a drink. Definitely a good amount of space for that, and you can also set your phone in there as well. But moving along, you do have this little center dash right here, and you do have a USB and USB-C port, followed by an auxiliary jack right there, and an SD card thing right there. But you know, if you, let's say your phone's about to die and you're on your way to a family member's house or something that's out in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, dang, I really forgot my phone charger, boom, set your phone right in there. That's a wireless charger, so you don't got to worry about bringing you know, a cord with you or anything like that. So that's definitely an awesome feature to have, especially on a vehicle like this. I'm definitely a big fan of that. But looking back, turning my head, I love how you can see that 6.2 liter V8 by this beautiful piece of glass right there. I think that's really awesome. And like I said, it just really gives you that Lamborghini feel. And this is just basically the base model Corvette. So can you imagine the Z06 or the ZR1 if this thing's this badass already? But you know, this is a coupe, and with the coupes on Corvettes, you can take the top off. So you know, you just turn this thing basically out this way, turn that thing out this way, and pull this thing down like that. So if you have a C7, the operation is the exact same as a C7, and the top will come right off. And like I said, you can store it right back there in the storage space. So there's definitely no shortage of storage in this car, which is awesome. So Chevy, I'm glad that you paid attention to that, and you left your GT roots, but you also added some supercar elements to it. So you guys knocked this thing out of the park. I'm definitely a huge fan of that. But on this side as well, you do have two memory adjustment seats right there. And just by looking at the seats, you know, these are the GT2 seats, and they're so comfortable. Like, and if they're not super comfortable to you, you can adjust the side bolster to either get thinner or wider. So, you know, if you're a thicker guy, you can adjust the side bolsters to where you want them to be. But for me, at 5'9", I'm a skinnier dude. I'm 140 pounds. I have mine adjusted, and they hold me in very, very well. And they're very, very comfortable seats. Definitely a fan of these seats. You know, they're nice and cushy when you want them to be, but they also hold you in where you want them to be. And I'm definitely a fan of how they hold my legs in very well. So like I said, if you want to track this car, you definitely can. This is definitely a car that's going to hold you in very well around the track. But yeah, so we've talked about the interior, we've talked about the exterior, we've talked about the performance. Now I want to see what this thing's like out on the road, and if you can daily drive one of these, or if you can, you know, get one of these and it's going to be one of those fun weekend drivers. So I'm going to see you guys in the driver's seat, and we'll talk about it then. So a couple more things I want to add before we get into the driving portion of the review is that this car does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And another thing I also want to do is I'm going to get a startup video, and I'm going to get a couple revs just so you guys can hear what this thing sounds like on a startup. And then I'm going to compare Tour, Sport, and Track mode, just so you can see what the exhaust sounds like in each different mode. But yeah, let's get into the startup. And now on to my favorite part of each and every review that I do, and that is the drive part of the review. You learn so much about a car, obviously, by driving it. And just by driving, I haven't really driven this thing that much. I probably put 6 to 10 miles on this thing, and just between sitting in this car, doing a little bit of the review on the interior, and just feeling all the different parts of this car, this thing feels so solid. It's a beautiful day. I made a TikTok of how to take the top off, and that was super easy, and I got to drive it around. I did a few loops. I'm gonna include part of that footage right here with the top off and it driving. But man, with the top off and with the windows down, it's basically kind of like you have a C8 Spider without, you know, paying the extra upcharge for the Spider part. And you get the look of the coupe, and personally I like the way the coupe looks better. You know, that's just my personal opinion. I feel the same about a coupe looking better than a Spider or convertible pretty much with every car, whether it be a hardtop convertible like this car would be with a Spider. It's the same. I'm not a huge fan of the Ferrari Apertos and just stuff like that. You know, I just like the way that a coupe looks, and I really like how, like with Chevy and the Corvette, they've pretty much always had a coupe version of the Corvette with the top off. Like my uncle's got a C5 Corvette, and sometimes I get to drive it, and I love taking the top off because it makes the experience just that much more visceral. And especially, like, you know, a C5 is great and all, but after driving this car with the top off and hearing the exhaust note, you know, hearing the crack between each shift, this thing is literally like a supercar, you know. And you're paying not supercar prices for this thing, and I think that's awesome. And one of the first things I want to mention, basically right off the bat, is I like to drive cars in manual mode. You know, my car is a manual, but anytime that I get in a car like this, or pretty much any performance vehicle, I really like to put the car into manual mode and just, you know, play with the paddle shifters and stuff like that. And in the previous generation C7s, you know, the paddle shifters really, I mean, I hate to say it, but they weren't that great. And that is totally different now. Obviously, they do have a dual clutch transmission in this car, and upshift, downshift doesn't matter. They're instant, and either one, like here, we'll do a downshift, just instant shifts, and we'll do an upshift right here. And one thing I love, like when you're kind of getting on the car a little bit, and you got your paddle shifters on, and you're in sport mode, it'll do like a pop in between each shift. It'll go pow pow. And, you know, from sitting in the interior, you may not think that this car is that loud. And this has the Z51 Sport exhaust, and from the outside of the car, the exhaust is actually a lot louder than what it feels like on the inside. There's so much sound deadening in between you, the motor, and the exhaust, that when you're on the inside, the windows are up, and, you know, you're just talking kind of like this. it's very subdued. So you can, you know, you can actually like own a business and be on a conference call in this car while you're driving it. And that's something that I think is awesome. And I love how they made it daily drivable, but they also, like, in between each shift, there's just that little bit of drama that makes it very, very fun to drive this car. You know, in like Lamborghini Aventadors, they have like that ISR gearbox with it's a single clutch gearbox, and a lot of people complain about it, and I feel like a lot of the people who complain about it aren't really car people, because when you're driving a car and you want, like, you kind of want to feel the shift in between each gears. And like in a Lamborghini Aventador, when you're balls to the wall in that thing and you're using the paddle shifters, you're going like bah, bah, in between each shift, it really like jolts you, and I really, really like that. And you know, this car doesn't jolt you so much, but it jolts you just enough to know that like you're driving something that's badass, and it gives you just that little element of fun in your daily driver. So you could, like I said, you could daily drive this, but also like if you want something that's like a Sunday driver, you're gonna go out and, you know, you're gonna go you know, take this thing to car shows, or you're gonna rip up a back road, this is a great car to do. And you know, like I mentioned this earlier in the video, this is just the first iteration of the C8. So, you know, this is the C8 Stingray, then they're gonna have the C8 Z06, and then they're gonna have a C8 ZR1. So if this thing is this good, this fun, and it gives you those elements of drama that you want, I can only imagine what the Z06 is gonna be like. Like, if I am able, and I'm in the position of able to, you know, buy a C8 Z06 by that point, I am 100% gonna put a deposit down on one. Obviously, I'm not in the position to afford one right now, but if I could, I would totally get one of these even. Like, this thing is freaking awesome in and of itself. Like I said, this is the first iteration of the C8. So, we got a little bit of a back road here. Let's downshift. Oh, man, it sounds so good. Downshift. Like I said, those shifts, man, you can hear that pop, and it like kind of lunges you forward a little bit in between each shift, which is awesome. I'm a huge fan of this car, like really, really, and it handles amazing. I haven't really even pushed it yet. I'm only going 40 miles an hour in like a 35 mile an hour zone, so really not that much faster than the speed limit. But we got a tight curve coming up right here. Gonna do a little downshift, brake, send it through the corner. Oh my god, so flat. That mag ride in all these GM products is just so good. Like, I got to drive the Tahoe, and you know, I made a video with it, but the video, you know, I lost my camera, so I wasn't able to, unfortunately wasn't able to post that review. But that car, and I also did that video with that Denali, both of those cars, both of those trucks handled so well, like very, very well, especially for their size. And that's definitely big in part thanks to that magnetic ride. And man, those shifts, they're so fun, even at low RPM. I'm in sport mode, and I went through first through fourth gear all the way up to 30 miles an hour, and man, it just puts a smile on your face. Like, it kicks you. Like, you can really feel those shifts are violent, but they're not too violent. They're like that perfect, like, they're perfect. Like, I really like great transmission. Great engine sound. I really like that pushrod V8. You know, like I said in my last video, I've got a Chevy Camaro LS3, you know, just that good old pushrod V8. Man, that shifts. Here we go. Give it a little. Not getting on it too much. That was just a 50 miles an hour. And it's just so much fun. Even like, you don't have to be going fast to have fun in this car. And I think that's a big plus, because, you know, especially kind of where I live, there's not really that many places that you can get out and you can open up these cars, unless you go, you know, an hour down south to, like, you know, Shenandoah-ish area, or just the more rural areas of Virginia, where there's more straight roads, there's more nice back roads. But in Northern Virginia, you can't really open these cars up all that much and all that often. But you know, what's great about the C8 is that this car is more focused, like 0 to 60-ish time. So once you get, you know, from what I've heard, I haven't really pushed, I haven't gone over like 60 miles an hour in this thing, but I've heard like once you get above 60 miles an hour, they're not as fast. And you know, that's what makes this thing a great car for this area, is because you can have a lot of your fun down low in between 0 and 60 miles an hour. And you know, it's pretty dramatic. And I appreciate that drama between the exhaust note, between the transmission, and just between, you know, driving it myself. And I'm feeling like driving kind of like a manual transmission with the paddle shifters. And you know, what really makes a paddle shifter car is just the responsiveness of the gearbox. And this gearbox is very, very responsive, upshifts and downshifts. But we're gonna do a couple accelerations, nothing crazy. I just want to give you guys what it sounds like from the interior to do a little acceleration, nothing crazy again, but we're gonna get into those accelerations here. Here we go. Just a little acceleration right there. Like, I had that guy in that van in front of me, and he was like, oh man, dude, that's awesome. Like, I can hear him screaming. He's like, yeah, hit it, hit it, hit it. So I gave him a little acceleration. But man, this thing, just like the TRX, is a smile machine, man. And you know, people always say like money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys stuff like this. And this, like, dependent if you're a car guy or if you're not a car guy, this stuff can make you very happy. And you know, obviously it's not going to make you the most happy person in the world, but you know, this thing just, it'll brighten up your day. It's just, it brightens up everybody's day. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up, is that this car is a conversation starter. Like, I was doing the review with from the outside and the inside over where I did it, and you know, I probably had 6 to 10 people come up to me either asking what kind of car it was, or they're like, oh man, that's a beautiful vehicle, or they're like, man, that thing's awesome, or like, just like so many things. Like, this thing like is a conversation starter. And like, I was talking to my friend who helps me do these videos, is, you know, when you have like a Lamborghini or something like that, you know, people kind of right off the bat don't really like you as much. They think you're kind of like a D-bag. You know, it's just, it's a preconceived notion that people have about like Lamborghini owners or Ferrari owners or just exotic owners in general. But one thing that's great about the C8 is that it's not like that. Like, people like are very happy to see one of these. They want to talk to you about it. And you know, that's really cool, because this car is an attainable supercar. Like, you can get these cars for a fraction of the price of what you can get even like a Huracan or something like that. And you know, that's really cool, because it gives the average person the attainability to get into like a supercar or a mid-engine sports car like what this is. And you know, I know like some people might be like, you know, this isn't a supercar, blah blah blah, just because of the price or because it's a Chevy or a Corvette. But you know, I've driven like a Lamborghini Aventador, and you know, the cockpit feels very similar. Obviously these doors don't go up, but just the feeling of the paddle shifters and everything, and the looks that you get, and just everything in collaboration comes together to make this thing kind of like a supercar. And I'm like, I might get a little bit of hate for that, but it's true. But let's do a little acceleration right here. You hear those great downshifts with a little bit of pops, and here we go. And keep in mind, those accelerations, that was just to 60 miles an hour from like 15 miles an hour, and I was going up to 4,000 RPM max. And it's just fun. Like, I really enjoy my time in this car. But we're gonna do a couple more little minor accelerations. Nothing crazy, no 0 to 60s, but you know, just like regular acceleration. So here we go. Just gonna do a quick downshift. Just barely getting on it, and it's just fun. Like, once you like, that was a 3rd to 4th gear acceleration, and I hit 3rd gear and it was pulling 4th gear, and then it, boom, that torque just hits you, and it's like, okay, we're going. And that's what's really awesome about this car, is that you can have just so much fun low RPM. And you know, a lot of cars, you can't really have that much fun low RPMs. Like Lamborghinis, for example, you know, you really got to wind a Lamborghini out. And same with a Ferrari or a McLaren, you really got to wind those cars out to really access the full power that you get. Because those cars are honestly, they're more focused towards higher RPM. And I really like that about the C8, like I was just talking about, is they're really focused about the low RPM too. And you know, that's where you can have a lot of fun in and around town. And you know, this is just a great daily driver. This is a great weekend sports car just to have a little bit of fun. And you know, you don't have to pay all that much to get this level of fun. So if you're looking at getting a C8, definitely go out, see if you can test drive one. But if you're not allowed to test drive one, you know, take my word, this thing handles so well. It's very well composed in just, you know, daily driving situations. It's very well composed going around turns. You know, you can have a lot of fun going fast in a straight line. And, you know, it's just a great overall vehicle, especially for the price. Well, that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Please hit that subscribe button. I'm really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. I really need to hit that milestone. I'm really trying to make my dream come true. And it's only possible with you guys hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button, and leaving comments in the comment section down below. So if you guys enjoyed watching this C8 Corvette review, please leave a comment in the comment section down below. Tell me what you liked most about this car. And also tell me, would you guys buy a C8 Corvette if you had $100,000? Or what other vehicle would you buy for $100,000? But like I said, that's it for today's video. Please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.